This quilt block is called the electric fan. That's what we're going to be making today. We're going to be making it in a 6-inch size, but I have a printable in my shop that you can do 7 sizes. So go ahead and grab that if you want to do a bigger size. But let's just get started here. For a 6-inch block, we're going to need 4 squares of fabric. Now they're all the same size. They are 4.5 inches. We're going to need 2 squares of a background color, and then we will need a square of a light color and a square of a dark color. Now these are all 4.5 inches. So to begin with, we're going to grab our 2 background pieces and we will just flip them upside down, and on the back side we will draw our stitching lines. So I will just take my quilting ruler here. I will line up the 1/4 inch marking from corner to corner and then just draw along the edge of the ruler. So that will give us our line that is 1/4 of an inch away from the center of the square diagonally, and that will give us our stitching line. So we'll just repeat that on the other one. Next we'll take each of our colored squares and we will place a background square right sides together on each one. We will take these over to the sewing machine and we will stitch along both of those lines that we just drew. Alright, so we have our squares sewn together. Next we will just take our little cutting mat and we are going to slice these in half right down the middle between those stitching lines. So I just take my quilting ruler and line it up from corner to corner and then just cut it right in half. And we're going to press these open. So we want to press so all of the pieces are towards the color, not the background. So I'm going to place the color side up on each of these half square triangles. Then we'll just lift and press, and then that will have the seam pressed towards the color. So this will help with nesting our seams as we work on the next step here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of each color, or one, a dark and a light. We're going to place them right sides together. Now when we do this, we want to make sure that the background is opposite of each other and the color is opposite of each other. So we don't want it like this. Wrong? Right. So when we do this, we want to line it up and we're going to feel along the seam here. Of course we want the edges to line up, but the most important part is for the seam to line up because that's going to give us our sharp points. So just kind of feel along. Actually, I forgot. Before we get it all lined up super well, we do need to draw our lines on the back again. So this is just the same thing that we did before. The only difference is we're drawing it on a half square triangle instead of a solid piece, and that is not right. I lined up the wrong line with that one. Okay, so we're just going to take these. We'll make sure they're, see, that's wrong. Make sure that they're opposite of each other, just like that. We'll line them up, the squares, but then we'll also feel and make sure that those seams are lined up next to each other. And we'll just go ahead and stitch along our lines, ignoring the one that I messed up on. Alright, so we've stitched along those lines, and then we will just repeat this same process of cutting them between those stitching lines. So just line up the ruler corner to corner and slice it in half. Just like this. And then what you'll get is you'll get this little hourglass block. So before we open those up and press them open, we're going to trim them to size. So for the 6-inch block, we want to trim them to 3.5. So let me zoom in here. As I'm doing this, I'm using this Quilt in a Day triangle square up ruler. There's a line here that has the markings. So we have 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. That marking is going to go along the stitching along the bottom. There's also a marking vertically, and we want to line that one up with the stitching this way. And that will make sure that when we trim it, that the seam is in the center, the point, right? We don't want to have it over here and then our point is off-centered. So we'll just line up those two lines along those stitchings, and we will just trim around both sides just like this. I always have a hard time with those corners. Okay, and we'll just keep doing that with all 4 of those little blocks. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be doing is pressing. Now, for this block, there's just kind of this weird twist of how you need to press them to get your seams to line up. And particularly, I'm wanting to make sure that the center of the pinwheel lines up perfectly. So I'm going to take one block and I will press it with the light side towards the light side. And the rest of the blocks I'm going to press towards the dark fabric. Okay, so just do that and make sure you keep track of the one that is pressed towards the light. So I'm going to set that one there, and the other 3 I will make a different pile. Trim these little tails off real quick, and then we will arrange our block. So this piece will be on the left bottom corner, and then we will just build our block from there. We're just going to take our dark triangles and we're going to create a pinwheel in the middle. So you'll just rotate until it forms a pinwheel, making sure that one that is pressed towards the light fabric is in the bottom left. Okay, so next we will take our pieces, we will flip them right sides together. We will make sure that our seams are nested at the point of the pinwheel. Not all of the seams are going to nest, like this one is not going to nest, but the most important part to me is the center point matching up. So I'm going to pay particular attention to that. Just the nature of how many different seams we have, the mirror imaging of the pieces doesn't allow for all of them to nest, but I want to make sure that the points of the center nest. So I'm going to pay particular attention to that as I'm stitching it together. Okay, so we have our 2 rows sewn. So next we're going to press. We're going to flip one this way and one this way, and then we will just lift and press. This will allow our seams to nest this way as well. So not only do we have our seams for the on the diagonal, we have our seam going this way, and so we're just trying to get it so that everything can nest as nicely as possible. So you'll see here we have one seam going to the left, one seam going to the right. If we look at the diagonal pieces, we have one going to the left, we have one going to the right, and then on this half we have a left and a right, and we just try to get those to nest up nicely. So I just like to line it up, and I use my fingers a lot to feel. You'll get to have a feel for if things are right. If you are off a little bit, then you'll feel a lot more bulk. So I just line it up and I just try to get those seams to nest in as good as possible. The ends right here, they are not necessarily going to match up right. So what I do is I just flip it in order to nest it. Then when I stitch it, I just flip it back, and it seems to do okay on getting the points to match up okay. So you can see, like on this one, it matched up pretty well. So that's kind of what I do on the ends. Just the nature of how many seams and all the directions, they're not all going to nest nicely, but we definitely want the center to nest so that we get that sharp point in the middle. Okay, so we have our block sewn together. Let me just show you on the back side how I press it. So we have a lot of seams meeting here in the middle. So to spread out the bulk, I just fiddle with the middle part, and we're going to be pressing one seam one direction, one seam the other way, and I just play with it until it lays one way or the other in that middle. Then I'll just take my iron and I will press that way on the one side, and I'll get to the middle and press it, and then the other side I will press the opposite direction. And then you can kind of tell that it makes like a little mini pinwheel or 4-patch right there in the middle. It's hard to tell because it's all the loose threads and everything fraying right there, but that's kind of the goal, is to kind of spread out that bulk a little bit. Okay, so that is how you make the electric fan quilt block. So this one is the 6-inch size, but go ahead and grab that printable pattern if you'd like to make other sizes like a 9 or a 12. There's a total of 7 different sizes in that printable. The nice thing about it is there is instructions, there's diagrams, there's the cut measurements for 7 different sizes. So go ahead and grab that printable in the shop.